2 years ago, everything I knew, everything I loved, was gone in an instant. Losing Harvey felt like losing the best part of me. 20 years of love, laughter, and partnership. You don't just move on from that. I thought I was strong. I thought I could handle the silence that followed, but I wasn't prepared for how lonely it would be. It's not just the empty house, it's the mornings when there's no one to share a coffee with, the nights when the bed feels too big and cold, the little moments when you hear a joke and turn to laugh with him only to remember he's not there. It's like losing him all over again, every day. And then Coulson moved in, my nephew, Harvey's side of the family. I hadn't seen much of him over the years, just holidays and the occasional visit, but he was always such a kind soul, a gentle, caring presence. When he moved into the house, it wasn't just for him, it was for both of us. What started out as a way to help him turned into something I didn't expect. At first, it was comforting to have someone around, someone to fill the silence, but the way he looked at me was different. He didn't just see a grieving widow, he saw me, the real me. And for the first time in years, I felt alive. Coulson Calhoun, my nephew by marriage, was more than just extended family. I remember him as a little boy, full of life and curiosity, running around our house during the holidays. He always felt at home here, and Harvey, my husband, treated him like the son we never had. Coulson's life hasn't been easy. He lost his parents when he was still a child. Boarding school became his second home, but he was always with us during holidays. We made sure he felt loved, part of something bigger than the pain he'd endured. I remember baking biscuits with him in the kitchen, playing board games late into the night. Those memories are etched in my heart. When he moved in last year, it felt so natural. He was family, and I knew how lonely he must have been. I didn't realize how much I needed him. The first few weeks were filled with the mundane, getting his room ready, sorting out schedules and sharing meals. But there was something comforting about having him around. We began to spend more time together. Dinners turned into long conversations. Late nights were spent watching old shows we both loved. And as the days passed, I noticed things I hadn't before. His kindness, his quiet strength, the way he seemed to really see me. At first I shrugged it off. It was probably just my imagination. We were close, that was all. But then something changed. The way he looked at me, the way he spoke. It was different. There was a warmth, an intensity that took me by surprise, and I couldn't deny how it made me feel. We were two people, both lost in our own way, finding solace in each other. And strange as it may seem, it felt right. If you've enjoyed this story so far and want to know what happens next, please like, share, and subscribe. It's your support that keeps these stories going. Coulson has this way about him, charming, confident, and deeply caring, with a warmth that draws you in without even trying. At first it was the little things, compliments here and there, things like, "You look beautiful today," or "You have such a light about you." I didn't think much of it. I chalked it up to kindness, a natural affection between family members who shared a bond. Then there were the times when his hand would linger just a second too long, a brush of fingertips against mine as he handed me a plate, a touch on my shoulder that sent a shiver down my spine. I told myself it was innocent, that he was just being sweet. But deep down I began to feel something shift. It wasn't just his actions, it was how I felt about them. The way my heart would race when he walked into the room, the way I caught myself looking at him, not as the boy I'd helped raise, but as a man who made me feel noticed, wanted. Then came the teasing. He'd make little jokes, call me trouble with a grin that made my cheeks flush. He'd playfully steal the last bite of dessert or nudge me with his elbow during a film, laughing when I pretended to be annoyed. His laughter was infectious, and I found myself smiling more than I had in years. But soon the teasing took on a different tone. His compliments became more direct, more personal. The way he would tell me, "You're amazing, you know that," or "I don't think you realize how amazing you are." He started to stand closer. His touches became more deliberate. A hand on my hip as he passed me in the kitchen, a brush of his fingers down my arm during a quiet conversation. It was subtle at first, and I wasn't sure if I was imagining it, but one night it became crystal clear. We had just finished dinner, the kind of night where conversation flowed effortlessly, full of laughter and connection. As we were cleaning up, he reached out and gently brushed the hair from my face. "You deserve to feel loved again," he said, his voice soft but firm. I froze. His words were like a spark, igniting something inside me I hadn't felt in so long. There was a tenderness in his eyes that took my breath away. My heart was pounding, and I didn't know what to say. The moment hung in the air, heavy with unspoken possibilities. I couldn't sleep that night. His words played over and over in my head. What did he mean? Did he really see me like that? Or was I reading too much into it? And more worryingly, how did I feel about it? Try as I might to push it away, I couldn't deny the truth. For the first time in years, I felt alive, seen, wanted, and that realization was as exhilarating as it was terrifying. It happened on a stormy evening, the kind where the rain patters softly against the windows and the flickering candlelight makes the world outside seem distant. We had been talking for hours, sitting in the living room, a bottle of wine between us. Conversations like this had become our norm, talking about life, the things we'd lost and the hopes we still clung to. But this night felt different. There was an intimacy in our words, a depth that went beyond the usual. He spoke of his dreams, his struggles, and how much he admired my strength. I don't think anyone had looked at me like that for years, with such intensity, such genuine concern. Somewhere between his stories and mine, the space between us disappeared. His hand brushed against mine, and this time neither of us moved. My heart pounded, each beat louder than the storm outside. I could feel the warmth of his presence, and for the first time I wasn't afraid of it. Then he leaned in. It was subtle at first, a slight tilt of his head, his eyes searching mine. I didn't pull away. I couldn't. It was as if all the doubts, all the questions melted away in that moment. His lips met mine, and everything else faded away. The guilt, the worry, the world outside. Something inside me came alive that night. I felt wanted, valued, in a way I hadn't felt for a long time. His touch wasn't just physical, it was emotional, healing wounds I didn't even know were there. For those hours I let myself feel, let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, I deserved this happiness. But when morning came, so did the questions. The guilt settled in like a shadow, creeping into my thoughts. Was I wrong? Was I betraying Harvey's memory, the love we had shared for so many years? And yet I couldn't deny what had happened that night. I felt alive again, and no matter how complicated it was, I couldn't bring myself to regret it. The next 6 months were like a dream I never wanted to wake up from. Coulson brought light and laughter to every corner of my life. Mornings began with him in the kitchen, his messy hair and easy smile greeting me as he prepared breakfast. He'd bring me coffee, often with a little flower from the garden next to the cup. Small gestures, but they meant everything. He'd surprise me all the time, little notes left on the counter, a favourite song playing softly in the background when I came home, or a bouquet of flowers on a random Tuesday. It wasn't just the grand gestures, it was the thoughtfulness in every little thing he did. Our conversations were endless, flowing naturally from serious topics to silly jokes. We'd talk about the future, about dreams and possibilities, and then laugh about some ridiculous memory from the past. For the first time in years, I felt like I had a partner, someone who saw me, who understood me completely. But as blissful as those moments were, they weren't without their shadows. Late at night, when the house was quiet, doubts crept in. What would people say if they knew? Could we ever really have a future together? Or was this just a fleeting moment of happiness, destined to fade? There were days when these thoughts consumed me and made me question everything. I'd watch him working on his laptop or preparing for his new job, and I'd feel a pang of guilt. He was young and had so much ahead of him. Was I being selfish for holding on to him, for letting this happen? But then he'd look at me, his eyes filled with a kind of love and certainty that melted away any doubt. When he reached for my hand or pulled me close, it felt like nothing else in the world mattered. In those moments, all the questions, fears, and guilt faded away. Still, there were times when I wondered if we were living in a bubble, a beautiful, fragile bubble that could burst at any moment. But if it did, I told myself, I'd make the most of every second while it lasted. For the first time in years, I wasn't just existing, I was living. Coulson had a plan he believed would bring us both the happiness we deserved. One sunny afternoon, he took me for a drive in the countryside. The rolling fields stretched for miles, the low hum of the car the only sound between us. When we stopped, he gestured towards a small, picturesque house nestled in a grove of trees. "I've been thinking a lot about us," he began, his voice calm but filled with a kind of nervous energy. "We've had something amazing, something special, but maybe it's time we thought about the future in a different way." I stared at him, not sure what he meant. The words hung in the air for a moment before he continued. "You deserve a real chance at love again," he said, turning to face me fully. "Someone who can give you everything, a husband, a family. I know how much you've given up, how much you've been through, and I think you should have that." His words stunned me. A husband, a family. The thought hadn't even crossed my mind for so long. I'd put everything into this relationship with Coulson, and now he was suggesting I start over, but with someone else. "I've been thinking about myself too," he admitted, his voice quieter now. "I need to start thinking about finding someone, settling down, starting a family of my own." The weight of what he was saying hit me like a wave. He wasn't talking about us anymore. He was talking about two separate futures, his and mine. "I'll always love what we had," he added quickly, as if to soften the blow. "But maybe this was meant to help us heal, to remind us what it feels like to be cared for, to feel alive again." My heart felt like it was in a storm. Part of me clung to the connection we'd made, the comfort we'd found in each other. But another part, the part that loved him enough to want the best for him, knew he might be right. Could I really let him go? Could I take his advice and start again, knowing he was doing the same? The idea of a life apart was almost unbearable, but so was the thought of keeping him from a future he deserved. I sat alone, the house eerily quiet, staring at an old photograph of Harvey. The weight of it all hit me at once. I'd made choices I never thought I'd have to make, and now I felt lost, completely and utterly lost. Coulson was right. He deserved a future, a family of his own. And maybe, so did I. But how? How do you start again when you've crossed so many lines, made so many mistakes? I've always prided myself on being strong, on getting through the toughest moments. But this was different. I had to admit it. I'd messed up. Somewhere along the way, I let myself believe that the comfort we found in each other could last forever. And now I didn't even know how to begin to untangle the mess I'd made. The thought of facing the world, hearing their opinions and judgments, was unbearable. But I know some of you out there have been in situations where love wasn't black and white, where the choices weren't easy. What would you do if you were me? I need your advice. How do you move on when your heart is split in two, when part of you wants to hold on and the other part knows it's time to let go? And to those watching, I know you'll have your opinions too. Some of you will say I should have known better, and maybe you're right. But I also know that some of you will understand that love, real, complicated love, doesn't always fit neatly into a box. I'd love to hear what you think. Please share them in the comments below. And if this story has touched you in any way, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support means more than I can say. For now, all I can do is sit here, stare at the sunset, and hope that somewhere out there, the answers will find me.